Ask a couple of questions between ourselves here, then we'll throw it open to you. I'm sure you've got lots of things you'd like to ask Robin about the film. So Robin, I believe the film was adapted initially from a novel that you wrote called Cowboys for Christ, but in making the film and titling it The Wicker Tree, obviously it ties it very directly back to the Wicker Man. So did the change of title come from you? Are you happy with that? Is that...
No, I'm very happy with it. I felt I needed that icon, that the man and the woman, for this Beltane sequence, and we wrote the song around it, the Wicker Tree song, and I'm very pleased with the sculpture, the wicker sculpture that they did, and when we start distributing the film, we're going to have a copy made and cart it around on the back of a truck, and it's eventually going to sit on an estate in Scotland where there's going to be a regular folk music festival.
It would seem to me that one of the things that made the Wicker Man so potent was the fact it seemed to be commenting on faith and belief at that period, the sort of late 60s, very early 70s. So it is, in making this film, are you attempting to comment on the state of faith today, is it? And updating of that?
Well, I think it's fair to say that since then, in the last 30 years, most people will agree that agnosticism, and not going to church, just getting married, buried, and baptized, is about what most Christians do. And that, surprisingly enough, has happened in Scotland as well as in England. In Scotland, when the film was made, The Wicker Man, there was a strong Presbyterian ethic, still alive and well, as Howie more than suggested, and I think that's very largely gone. However, it's not one of the main points of the film. The film really is about the innocence of the two young Americans and the fact that they make the perfect victims for the wicked Lachlan and his wicked wife.
I know it was mentioned many years ago that you were going to be making a film called The Riding of the Laddie. So, I mean, what is the history of the film? Was it originally a screenplay and then a novel and a screenplay again? What's the kind of...
Rather like that. Rather like that. I did write a screenplay called The Riding of the Laddie, and then someone told me that it was an extremely rude title. I should rename it. And while I was renaming it, I decided to make it into a book. And I was spending some time in the United States at the time, and the whole genesis of setting it in Dallas kind of occurred to me, and so the book grew out of that. At the same time, the remake of The Wicker Man was happening, and the reaction that I had to the film, and obviously everyone asked me what I thought of it, was that they had sort of thrown out all the things which I'd wanted to do again in a film. Use songs as part of the dialogue, not like we do in opera, but in the way that we have done. Use comedy, also to advance the story. Have the added ingredient of romance, as I said at the beginning. Of course, it's a tragic romance in this case, except for, you could always look at silver linings in stories like this. They go to heaven together, and if you like to believe that, well, I certainly do sometimes, then that's a silver lining. For the wicked Lolly, she gets her baby, and everyone believes it's pagan triumph. Well, of course, we know that it isn't. Any of us who know anything about biology, it cannot be. And I enjoy putting other themes into films and into this film, and I think that the nuclear part of the story, which is based, as most people in this room will know, because we're not a million miles from Liverpool here, where very similar things happened. in the nuclear, well, mini tragedy in comparison to what's happened in Japan. But nevertheless, it happened. And the water table was infected and people were made, unable to have children and that sort of thing. So those themes fitted into my plot quite conveniently. And I like putting things in which seem to be relevant to us today. The fundamentalist aspect, some people ask whether I mean to show them as fundamentalist. I think they are fundamentalist in the way that they believe that every word in the Bible is God's word. And if you ask them whether they saw anything unusually strange about the book of Genesis and Adam and Eve and so on and so forth, they'd still have to think of it and then say, well, it's God's word. They would come from a community which would think that to believe in Darwin is a sin. But in spite of all that, they're nice young people. And there are actually, the statistic in the film of 14 million is wrong. It should be 40 million. But our American distributors thought that was getting a little far. So still 40 million is not all that huge a statistic amongst 350 million, which is the population of the United States. I just wonder what else would I could say.
Well, you mentioned there about the music, and obviously that's very important in the
yes,
film,
indeed,
and equally important in the Wicker Man. I'm sure you're aware that there are now sing-along screenings of the Wicker Man.
Oh, absolutely.
So can you see that happening with this?
I think so. My composer, Keith Eastdale, who's a Glaswegian, and who has had extraordinary success as a performer, as well as a songwriter. And is even now, actually, performing with a group at the Scala, of all places, in Milan. He lives in Italy. He took to the idea of having to produce all this pastiche music that I asked him to do, like turning the Magnificat into bluegrass at the beginning, and Trailer Trash Love, which is really, I mean, I suppose if we'd done a proper pop song with her, we'd have had to have 50 or 60 people and an enormous amount of glitz, or, you know, twirling away. But I like the song, and I think she does it very well.
Are we ready with any questions out there in the audience? Anybody? Yeah, in the middle there.
Yeah, just want to say I really enjoyed the film to start with.
Thank you.
My question's about the original Wicker Man.
Yes.
I read online there were plans for a sequel where Sergeant Cowie survives and confronts Lord Summerising. Is that true?
Yes, Tony Schaffer, before he died, about 8 years ago, wrote a screenplay called The Loathly Worm. And I must confess I never read the screenplay. We weren't working the same part of the world at the time. I don't think anything ever came of it, but that actually did exist, I think. And it was, people had suggested that we reshoot the ending so that an enormous cloudburst came and put out the fire. A sort of US cavalry arriving. No, I don't think there was ever a serious consideration of a sequel. The film we've just seen is, of course, not a sequel, but in my mind, it's a sequel in the sense that it's a genre sequel. We've tried to tell a story and entertain you using the same kind of mixture of comedy and music and sex and horror as we did in The Wicker Man. In that sense, I think that's in any sense.
We should probably mark the fact that I think Diana Cilento died today. She was Rose.
She died yesterday, yes, she did, yes. Very sad. She was an extraordinary actress.